Hi everybody, I'm Dennis. Welcome back to the bindery. Today we're going to take a look at a tool I use in almost every bookbinding project, the piercing cradle. It's a simple device that holds my materials securely in place, which allows me to focus on the task at hand and thus help improve the precision and accuracy of my work. It's a tool I think every bookbinder should have, so if you're without one, then this video is for you. I'm going to show you how to make two different versions of this handy device. So if that sounds like something that would be handy for you, don't go anywhere and let's get started. So let's just talk a little bit about what a piercing cradle is. I have here my wooden cradle. This isn't the one that I'm going to be showing you how to make in this video, but it serves to illustrate all the general principles. If you're a woodworker or know one, then you shouldn't have too much trouble replicating this. It's really just a plywood base with two 45-degree angle pieces glued and screwed on. There's a kerf running straight down the center, and that gives room for the awl to pass through the signature and then down a little bit, but without going too far. At the end, I've just got a piece of wood screwed on. The hole in the center doesn't really serve a purpose. Maybe I thought I would hang it up when I first made it, but I never really do that. But as far as what the cradle does, it addresses three specific problems that creep up when piercing signatures freehand. Those issues are keeping all the individual pages aligned to the same end, keeping them nested together snugly at the fold, and then ensuring that all the pierced holes are centered on the crease. Achieving all of those things can be tricky sometimes. If things slip out of alignment or if you don't angle your awl just right, you could wind up with signatures with holes that don't line up or are on the faces of the page rather than on the spine. The piercing cradle rather elegantly solves all three of those issues. The V-shape of the bed allows the signature to fold open, so you've got clear access on the inside, yet it still supports it, and it naturally lets the pages nestle together down at the fold. This vertical end at the back allows you to tap the signature and bring all of the pages into alignment. And then when you're actually piercing the holes, you can hold the awl straight up and down rather than at an angle to the side, which is a lot harder to judge. In use, it's easy to develop a consistent rhythm, which will translate into neat and consistent results for your binding. To make a cradle, you'll need just a few tools and materials. I'm going to use gray board to make up the main components of the cradle, but if you don't have binder's board, then the stiff back board of a sketchbook is a very handy substitute. And conveniently, a sketchbook like this is exactly the right size for this project. You'll also need a strip of strong cloth. I'm going to be using book cloth, but anything like linen or even denim would work, though bear in mind that glue could seep through an unbacked cloth, so if appearances are important, try to use book cloth. In a pinch, you could even use a wide reinforced tape like duct tape, though it may not last as long. Finally, you'll need some glue. Any kind of PVA glue should be fine here. As for tools, you'll need a pencil, a craft knife, a steel ruler, a square, and a glue brush. And a cutting mat would be helpful too. The cradle's made up of 4 pieces of gray board, 2 of each size. You can either make yours exactly to the dimensions that I'm going to be providing, or you can scale it up or down to suit your own needs. So my piece of gray board is 12 inches by 9 inches, and that's large enough to make the entire cradle. I'll list all the dimensions on the screen off to the side. The 2 large pieces for the bed of the cradle will be a full 12 inches long and 3.5 inches wide, and the end pieces need only be 2 inches by 6 inches. Cutting gray board can be tough, so I recommend just using a sharp blade, firm pressure, and make multiple passes until you cut through. Because the book cloth is going to be on the inside of the fold, I'm going to place both pieces on the bench flat and tight together. I'll make a mark on the boards just to help me align my cloth when I glue it down. The width of your book cloth doesn't have to be precise. The piece I have just happens to be about 3 inches wide, or just over 80 millimeters. Here I'm gluing it out with straight PVA glue. As I said before, I don't think the type of glue is really important here, just as long as it sticks. I'll carefully place the cloth, keeping both of the boards tight together, smooth it out with my bone folder, and then I'll place it under a light weight for half an hour or so until it's dry. So that's dry now, and I'll just trim off any excess book cloth on either end. Now I'll lay out the slots that I need to cut that will accept the end pieces. So I don't want these supports to be too close to the end. I want to bring them in a little bit, and that'll leave enough material on the sides to give the cradle some lateral support. So I'm going to measure in 1 inch or about 25 millimeters from either end. In case I didn't mention it, my gray board is 2.5 mil thick. and I'll use the board itself to mark where I need to make the cut. To lay out the slots, I'm going to fold the two parts of the cradle over in half, and then using a square, I'll draw lines 2 inches out from the marks that I made, or about 50 millimeters. Now, using my square as a guide, I'll carefully cut through both layers of board. I'll take my time and work slowly, and make sure to keep my blade vertical so that I get a straight cut. It's a slow process, but you want it to be done well, so just take your time, don't rush it, and if you need to, take a break now and then to rest your hands. If you want, you can make these cuts before attaching the book cloth, but I find doing it this way ensures a perfect alignment. You'll find that the second cut for each slot is a little bit easier than the first, because after making the first cut, there's a little bit of give in the gray board to make room for the blade. Remove the excess from the slot with a stabbing cut from either side. On the other end, it's a little bit more awkward for me to hold the square, so after establishing the cut well into the gray board, I'll just use the existing cut as a guide. And of course, do be sure to keep your fingers out of the way of your blade. So if you measured well, the slots should be a nice snug fit for your end pieces. If your slot is a little bit too snug, try a little sandpaper on the inside edge just to remove enough material to let your end piece slide in easily. If, on the other hand, you find that the fit is a little bit too loose, try gluing some paper onto the end piece to bring up the extra thickness. To lay out the notches in the end pieces, I'll measure in from each side 1 3/8 of an inch, and then I'll make another mark another 1/4 inch further from that, and I'll repeat that on the other side. In metric, that's about 35 millimeters, and then an additional 6 millimeters. The depth of the notches will be a little bit more than 1/8 of an inch, or about 4 millimeters. I'm just going to mark that by eye. You can use a ruler as a guide for cutting these notches, but I'm just going to do it freehand. And I'll use the first piece I just cut to lay out the marks for the second one. So something I've noticed with my cradle being a very snug fit, there's quite a bit of stress happening right down here at this part, and it's starting to separate a bit. So what I think I'm going to do is add a little bit of book cloth around the outside of each end to give a bit of reinforcement. First I'll add a little bit of glue to where the book cloth is separated, and then I'll paste out another piece of book cloth and wrap it around with the cradle closed so that it gives full support all the way around. I'll glue the new cloth in place with the cradle closed, otherwise if I did it flat it wouldn't be able to bend. I'll just repeat that at the other end. Sometimes when things don't go as planned, it's not a criticism of your abilities. Just got to adapt. It happens to everyone. It's just a matter of knowing what to do to then repair it. I'll just put that under a little weight until it's dry, and then we'll see how it looks. That should be dry enough now. Let's take a look. So that's the finished cradle ready for use. Let's give it a quick test drive so you can see it in action. So I've got a little group of signatures that need to be pierced. Got my awl, and I've also prepared a little piercing guide for these signatures, and I've marked one end with an H, which denotes the head of the book. I like to keep the head of the book to my right. However you choose to do it is up to you. So grabbing the first signature, I'll tap it against the bench, and usually it'll fall open to the center when I do that. I'm off by one. I'll then place the signature in the cradle and slide it up to the end, and a slight tap makes sure that all the sheets are aligned to the head of the signature. I'll then place my guide into the center of the signature and align it to the head at this end as well. Now, holding my awl straight up and down, I can pierce the holes through the signature. The awl is going to go through the paper and the cloth of the cradle, and that's okay. If it ever wears out completely, you can just replace it. It's as simple as that. So there it is. It's a really handy design. It's quite sturdy, so it supports your work really well. And of course, when you're not using it, it breaks down really easily just into 3 pieces that you can fold up, put on your shelf, put in your bag, whatever you need to do with it. So now let me show you another one that's even easier to make and costs basically nothing because it uses materials that you probably have laying around right now. So for the second cradle, there's only one material that we're going to need, and that's this. Regular old corrugated cardboard. This is just a standard single-walled cardboard, the type that you'd have kicking around from shipping boxes, packaging, what have you. You'll need a fairly long piece of cardboard, about 23 or 24 inches long and about 7 inches wide, with the lines or grain of the cardboard running in the long direction. Now you want to find the middle of your strip of cardboard and fold it in half along that center line. The cardboard will naturally want to fold along one of the corrugations, but you can encourage it to fold where you want just by creasing it a bit with your folder. Try to use the flat of your folder when creasing the cardboard so as not to break through the outer paper layer. Next, measure in 7 inches from the end of the cardboard, or 178 millimeters, and draw a line parallel to the end. Next, measure 2 strips on either side 1 inch wide, or 25 millimeters. Mark those, and then cut away those tabs. Now, using your folder and your ruler as a guide, crease the cardboard along the line that you made, and fold the end tab up to 90 degrees. Holding your ruler down on one side helps to make a nice clean fold. Now, cut down the center line to the inner mark to create 2 tabs. Now take your cardboard and flip it over, and on the opposite side you want to measure in from the end 4 1/4 inches at the top and bottom, or 108 millimeters, and along the central cut measure in 3 3/8 inches from the end, or 85 millimeters. Draw 2 lines to connect the 3 points, and then crease and fold along those lines as you did before. Now repeat those steps at the other end, and the construction of this cradle is almost complete. Final assembly couldn't be simpler. Fold it along the center line and bring 2 flaps in to a 90-degree bend. Now bring the other 2 flaps up to meet the first 2. The angled folds that we made will now bend over to create the legs that support the cradle. If the legs don't meet perfectly down the center, well, it's just cardboard. Force them apart a little bit, and then pinch the crease to firm it up. Do the same thing at the other end. To hold the cradle together temporarily, put a rubber band around the entire thing, and it'll stand on its own. If you want to make it a little bit sturdier and permanent, add glue to the inside of all the folds, let that dry, and you'll have yourself a nice cradle. In use, your cardboard cradle works exactly the same as the other versions. It does the job of holding the signature open so you can pierce the holes, and your awl will go through the cardboard at the bottom fold, but that's okay. If you need to, you can reinforce it with some strong tape, maybe some book cloth if you want to make things a little bit more permanent. But for me, I would just recycle it when it's worn out and make another one. It's really just that easy. So there you have it, the piercing cradle, 2 ways, easy and even easier. If you found this video to be helpful, then my mission for today is complete. If you want to support me directly and help me make more videos like this, then the easiest way to do that is to just buy me a coffee. You'll find a link in the video description. Cheers! As always here at 4 Keys Book Arts, I'm Dennis, the hands in front of and behind the camera. So thanks for watching, have a great day, and I'll see you next time.